Hi everybody, it's Reva with Quality Sewing and Vacuum, and today we're going to have some fun. We're going to talk about some quick gifty ideas for maybe a baby shower you're going to or one of your own new babies. And I have a couple of things that are maybe things you might not have thought of before. So if you have any questions as we go along or any comments, please type them in the chat and we'll talk about it. I love interactions, so if you have any of those, please pop them in there. So, as some of you may know, I'm now a grandma. Yay! So our little Avery is now 6 weeks old, and so there's some things that I learned from other new moms and things that I actually brought back that were things that worked for me. So I'm going to share a couple of those. But before we do, I just want to show you this adorable little sweater. Is this not the cutest thing? Tootsie made this for a gift for my little new granddaughter, Avery. It's going to be a bit before she can get into it, but is this not cute? And she put the zipper in the back. She did such a beautiful job with all the stitching. It just looks so perfect. And she hand stitched the zipper in. Talk about love, right? That's one thing that I wanted to bring to your attention, is that we can make things that are special to people, that are something that is a true gift, not just in of itself, but a gift of the heart, and it means so much. Now, as I'm going to do another ploy, because I love this, and one reason I love this is how many times do you make something for someone that is a crafty or sewing friend? Probably not much, right? Because they could make it, so why should they're better than I am, right? But actually getting something handmade, you think about it, it's probably even more precious to you because you know the time that goes into it. So if I was to give you a gift that I made, you'd probably be like over the moon, as I am with this beautiful little sweater that Tootsie made. But I wanted to share that because it's just so stinking cute, and I can't wait for Avery to grow a little bit so she can wear it. Okay, some things that I made for my daughter as a shower present and getting ready for it. Of course, I made little bibs. And this is actually just a really simple little bib that was an AccuQuilt die that I had. So it's nothing that we have anymore, but it just was really, really easy. And it was quite sizable. And little Avery is so tiny that Kendall just tied a little knot in the back so that way it's not hanging down here. You know, nothing worse than a low-cut bib. It doesn't do any good. So anyway, just made a flannel. So that's just an easy thing. So if you have you can find an easy pattern just even on Etsy, not Etsy, I'm sorry, what is that? Pinterest. And you can just trace it out and make, or find one that you like. You can buy one and then just copy it with just some leftover quilting cottons, or this one is flannel. But my daughter really is liking the ones that they Velcro in the back, and they're just like a little bandana, and it's a good little, you know, dribble bib. And some of those are out of just like quilting cotton or like even a gauze type fabric. So you have lots of options. I know we all have scraps, right? So that's one thing you can make. Now this is another thing that this was showed. A friend of mine showed me this when I was expecting my first daughter. This is a style of blanket that she made for her kids as receiving blankets. So this one happens to be flannel, and you can tell it's been washed and loved and folded. But all it is 2 pieces of fabric. It does not have to be flannel. When my kids were little, I'd put flannel on one side and a cute novelty print on the other side, whatever made me happy. But all it is the width of fabric, so the 42 inches, right, by 45 inches. I made them kind of big, so that way you could wrap your kid up in it. And it's a really easy construction, so I thought I would show you how to make this. Because if you have yardage of fabric that you bought it because you loved it, but then you don't have a purpose for it, this is a good way to get rid of, to utilize big pieces of fabric. So with this, like I said, you can use flannel, or you can use quilting cotton, whatever you like. Having a flannel side is kind of nice and snuggly, so I wouldn't say it's a bad idea to have at least one side flannel. Now, I have my layers all pinned together. I'm going to unpin here so you can kind of see what's going on. I've got 2 layers of flannel here. And flannel, by the way, when you put right sides together, it kind of grips, so it does hold nicely. But I have those layers there. And then what I did is I layered them together and I did my final cut. Now you notice that this is much smaller than the one I just showed you. And this is going to stitch out a lot faster than a really big one. And then there's something else I'll tell you about that in a minute. But let me just pin this back together. So what we're going to do is we're going to stitch around the outside just with a regular straight stitch. Find yourself some matching thread. I have totally contrasting thread so you can see it today. But we're just going to sew around the outside. And we do not need to worry about having... you don't have to have a 1/4 inch seam allowance. If you're more comfortable just lining up with the edge of the foot, which is usually what I do on a project like this, that's what you can do. And if you get that thread caught, because I just set the machine on it and pulled it off, I'll just trim it off. Okay, so what I'm going to want to do is leave an opening on one side. So that way we can turn it right side out. Okay, so we're going to start sewing. And first I'm going to thread my machine because I have not yet done that. Okay, I've got it threaded. I have it on a straight stitch, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use the edge of my foot as my guide, and I'm going to put the foot down and I'm going to put my needle down. Okay. Now, I'm going to stitch a couple of stitches forward, and then I'm going to go back because what I want to do is now I want to pivot, and I'm going to not pivot this way, but I'm going to pivot in. And I'm going to make that, see, it's a 90 degree, it's perpendicular, it's straight from left to right. And I'm going to go backwards. 1, 2. Now I'm going to go forward and match my line again. Got to put my foot actually on the foot pedal, that helps. 1, 2. Okay, 1/2 of a stitch more. There we go. Now I'm going to pivot again. Now you're going to see how cool that is when we come back around. So now all I'm going to do is just stitch around the outer edge, take out the pins as I go. And these are the, if you're curious, these are the Quilter Select pins, and they come with a little pin dish that has the magnet inside, which is awesome because it controls those pins. Now you want to go smoothly around your corners. You don't want them hinking and jinking. That's a technical term. Okay. Not really. Okay. And when we get up to this next curve, oh, I started to tell you, when I get to the curve, I'm going to show you a little trick because I have some tips and tricks. Even if you're not making baby stuff, I got some stuff for you. But what I did when I cut this fabric, and I started to tell you, is I layered the fabric right sides together on the cutting table, and then I trimmed it to the size I want with both layers together. Now, when I start turning, and I'm coming back to that, but when I start making the curve, if you put pressure over here away from the needle, and that gives it an anchor point, the fabric will then swing around your finger and you'll have a smoother curve. Okay. All right, so I trimmed out, I cut the fabric to the size I wanted, and this is 22 by 23, so basically pretty much a 22-inch square, right? And then I rounded the corners, but I did it all at the same time, so that way the 2 layers matched. Okay, so that's just a tip. If you're working with your fabrics, if you're going to sew a blanket, just lay them out on your cutting surface with right sides together and do that. Okay, so I'm coming up to my next corner, and I'm going to anchor my finger about there when I get there, so it will kind of swing around that shape. And I'm not anchored yet because I'm not to that spot. Okay, so now as I do that, it starts to curve, and then you can reposition your finger and get it again, get that pin out of there, and we'll continue on. Okay, let's see where we are. Oh, we have one more corner, then we're gonna stop stitching. And I did not bring over my pinking shears, and I should have, because this is a great use for pinking shears is when you're trimming this down, because we're gonna trim our seam allowance to make it fit. All right, and I do have my stitch length at a little bit longer. It's at a 3, not a 2.5, because one, it's a faster sew, and it doesn't have to be a long stitch because we're going to stitch it again here in a minute. Okay, now I'm coming back here. We get this pin out. I personally like to leave a decent sized hole for me to get myself in and out of. So I'm going to stop right about there, and I'm going to pivot again, and I'm going to back up and then come forward and then cut my thread. When you make your space to get into, there's my start and there's my stop. When you make this space, make sure you're away from your corners because you really don't want to be in your corners. Now I'm going to make a big mess. I am going to trim down my seam allowance, but see how, can you see how the seam allowance here, this is my opening. Don't trim in there. I'm going to come in and start after that. And I'm going to make this pretty close. It's about 1/8 of an inch. Do not trim your stitches, and don't get too much tighter, especially if you're working with a loosely woven fabric or a flannel, because if you get too close to the stitches, it may fray and unstitch itself or come out of the seam. So don't, give yourself kind of like a maybe a 3/8. No, 2/8 is a quarter, like a 3/16, just over, in between a quarter and an eighth. How about that? Does that work better? I think that works better. All right, and we're just going to trim around. I hope there's some questions. You guys could throw out some questions at me so I have something to say while I'm trimming. But do you guys all make your baby gifts, or do you not make baby gifts? My daughter has taken up crochet herself, and she just made a couple of little blankets for gifts for some family members that are having babies. And so I suggested she buy some labels, and she says, why would they need labels? I said, well, people tend to forget where things come from. So she purchased some nice little leather, thin leather labels that say made by Kendall, and then you just sew them on to your project. And when she went to the baby shower the other day, she said that was actually the thing that everyone oohed and awed about, was the fact that it had a label with Kendall's name on it. So that's really kind of a nice thing. So they'll always remember who made that gift for them. Okay, we're coming back to the beginning or the end. So we're just going to go around. Don't want to be too far away from my curve. If you trim nice and small, your curves will actually turn out nicely. Okay, so now we're back to the beginning. So I'm going to veer off again there. And now let's go in here, and we're going to turn this right side out. So now it works really well if you go into the farthest away corners and get those kind of pulling. I pop them into my hand, grab them, and then we can pull them right side out. And when you pull them, you're not stretching the opening. So you can just pull that out, and then we will just go in here and we're going to smooth that out. We got a cute little curve there and a cute little curve here. And since I trim nice and close on those, the curves are actually turning out rather nicely. You're going to want to take this to your ironing board, get it all laid out nice. Make sure your seams, usually what I will do, let me get this kind of open, is I come in here and press the seam, just kind of lay it out like this and press that seam so it's flat. Then I'll come back and get it evened up like this, and then I'll press it all the way around. Okay, let's find our opening. Here it is. Now, the reason why I did that back stitch on that opening is because then that's going to naturally tack or fold the seam allowance, so it's going to want to go to the inside. So here's our little seam. It's already wanting to fold in because it's the rest of it over here is doing that. So it wants to go the same way. So just get that lined up nicely and then pin it shut. Okay, I'll put a couple of pins in there. And I'm not going to sew too much on this because I haven't pressed it, and it's just not going to come out until as perfectly as you might want if you don't give it the press. And do you know why you press it now? Because you can never get into those seams again as you can right at the beginning. All right. Okay, so what I'm going to do real quick is I will do this, but then I want to give you different options. So I would start right here, and I'm going to sew just like 1/8 of an inch away from the fold of the fabric, the edge of the fabric. And then that is one, closing up this opening, and it's also tacking everything down. So you can sew all the way around your entire thing. And let me give you a, yep. Okay, so that tacked down the seam, right, the opening, and it also gives a nice little top stitch. All right, so now on your machine, when you're doing one of these at home, a fun thing to do is to go into your decorative or your character stitches and take a look and see what fun stitches there might be that would match your fabric or match your mood or whatever you want to do. So, you know, give some of those a try, because there's tons of really great patterns that you can do, and then you can use your pretty decorative stitches. You don't have to do any stitching to get this anchored together if you don't want to, but you can if you do want to. So it depends on if you're making one and you want to put a lot of love into one, then do as much as you want. If you're making 10, then probably not, right? Okay, so here is that. Now, let's talk about that size. Here's one of our lesser known baby gift ideas. Make something this size. My daughter made herself this cute little blanket. Look at how tiny it is. It's 18 by 18. It's just a little tiny thing that she uses this with her car seat. She tucks Avery into the car seat, and then she puts this from her chin to her little feet and tucks her in so she has some warmth. And it's not a big, bulky blanket, because you know you can't wrap a baby in a blanket successfully and get them safely into the car seat, right? So this just goes over the top like a lap blanket. So this is a great size, and so few people actually think about making something that size. Now, this one I made bigger than that because Kendall's noticed that Avery is growing, and so the little size doesn't necessarily last as long. So she's making these for her friends. She makes them a little bit bigger. Okay, so this 22 by 22 will do longer. But isn't that nice? You can just so quickly and easily make a really fun little project for a new baby or, you know, someone else. And if you want to make just a little lap blanket, you can make these any size at all. So if I remember in high school, my car never got warm. It was an older car, so it always stayed cold. So just having a little blanket like this would have been so handy just to have in the car, because then I could have put it over my knees and I would have been warmer. So, okay. All right, so that is that idea. So there's that one. Now we're going to do something really fun, and I have it on a smaller scale to show you.
Atlanta actually said that her granddaughter loves her baby blankets. She's 4 now, and she still loves the little small blankets she has. So it's something kids will love a long time.
Oh, that's really a good point. You know that, yeah, because they can carry it easy, right? So that's a good point. Thank you. Okay, so I have a piece of vinyl, just clear vinyl, and for this project, it doesn't have to be thick. It can be really nice and thin, which is nice. And I have 2 towels. Okay, what on earth are we going to do with that? Well, let me tear off the paper tag. I don't need that. When our kids were little, when they were babies, I didn't want them to spill in the car. Which I knew they're going to anyway. And I also didn't want the car seats in any way to damage the upholstery of the car. So I thought, let's put down a towel, because they're inexpensive. Put a towel down and then that would protect the seat and it would kind of catch any messes. Then it dawned on me, well, this absorbs, that's great, but then it's going to sit on the seat and then that could be yucky, right? So, excuse me, if you take a clear piece of vinyl and put it in between two towels, then you have a waterproof towel that's going to catch your spills, and it's also going to protect your car, the upholstery. Okay, so I forgot to bring it, but I just made one for my car for our little Avery, and I didn't realize it, but I got a bath sheet, really big, but it was the same color as my upholstery. So what I did with that one is I took the towel in its entirety, and I put a piece of vinyl on half of it, and I folded it and it was half the size of the towel originally. Okay, does that make sense? We're going to do this, and we're going to stitch this with a whole towel. Now, my vinyl is a little bit shy of being long enough for the whole thing, but that really doesn't matter much because the likelihood that they're going to spill on the very edges is low. But I am going to put wrong sides together on the towel, and you know it's wrong sides because the seam and the tag, right? So I'm going to bring these together, and I'm going to match them up, and I'm going to get a clip, and I'm just going to clip them together. And then I'm going to continue around, just giving myself a couple of clips. Now, one thing you can do if you like to is well, actually, let me just do that. I'm going to show you how to do this. The vinyl can get a little difficult to control, right? So I'm going to stitch it down first. Now, if you have a dual feed or a digital dual feed on your machine, this is a great time to use it. So I'm going to take this foot off, my regular foot, and it's coming off, and I'm putting the digital dual feed that comes with this machine. This is called the Ballad, if you're wondering, and I'm going to get that on there, and let me plug it in. So now it's plugged into the machine and it's ready to go, but I just want to tighten that screw up just a little bit. Okay, so now on my stitches, I am going to go and choose a zigzag that has a step in it. So this one goes zig, step, stitch, 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 stitch. So it's 2 stitches for every left and right. So I'm going to choose that one, and I'm going to make it a little bit wider. It's 5 millimeters. That's pretty good. I'll make it a little bit wider, and I'm going to make it a little bit longer because I don't need it to be tight. But I'm just going to use this, and you use matching thread. That's always a good idea, but I'm not today. And I'm just going to go, and I'm going to stitch this on. So let me get that underneath the foot. And you probably want to you'd be well suited to use a heavier duty needle on this, just because of that, because we're gonna just because of that, because we're going through some layers. Okay, let's see if I can get that needle changed. That's never happened to anyone, has it? No. I did not get that unscrewed. Wow, whoever put this needle in last time has the strength of Hercules. Good night. There we go. Wow, that was a hard one to loosen. Okay, get rid of that. See if I have some. Let's hope I have some needles. I might not have any needles. Nope, I don't have any needles, Carrie. I'll go grab some. Talk amongst yourselves. I'm going to go grab some needles, and I'm going to be smart and grab some.
You want to talk?
Well, may as well. I don't want to leave you in silence. But we're going to go get some denim needles, because that's going to be a heavy. You can also use a top stitch needle. Okay, so who knows the difference between a denim needle and a top stitch needle? Anybody? I'll give you a second to figure that out. I hope no one's getting motion sick. I'll hurry. What?
I'm trying to keep steady. Like supermarket seats.
That's right. Oh, I love that show. We should do that.
Wait.
Wait? Oh, the weight. I'm like, wait, what? What do you want me to wait for? Okay, so the weight can, yes, absolutely. And also, a top stitch needle has a deeper groove down the front of the needle to protect the heavyweight thread that you use for top stitching. But they both have a really sharp point. I'm going to go for this guy. I'm going to do denim, a heavy denim. I'm getting it's an 18 or a 110, so that's a thicker, so that, just like she said, it helps with the weight of the fabric and how thick it is.
So Reva, does it matter? You're putting a soft needle into a baby lock machine.
Oh, good question. No, it does not matter. These are actually are a beautiful needle. They're milled a little bit differently. I'm switching sides. The eye has a smooth path from the path for the needle or for the thread down into the eye, so it's really smooth, so it gets less abrasion. And they do work beautifully in just about every machine. So if you're ever having a persnickety or a crabby machine, it's having an issue, try just a different brand of needle and see if that works for you. So sorry about that little adventure, but you know, have you ever done that where you know in your heart that you should do X, Y, or Z and you don't do it, and then you get
Sarah's wanting to know what location you're at.
We are in the Tukwila store, which is, if you're acquainted with Western Washington, it's near the South Center Mall, and right across the street from Seattle Chocolate Factory. So you know that's always lovely. We do pretty good though. We do not succumb to buying too much chocolate from Seattle Chocolates. Okay, all right, we'll try this again. Now I have one straight edge on my vinyl, and I'm going to start down a little bit away from that bulky edge. And you know, I do not have, oh, there we go. I didn't even have him on straight. So let's, oh, that's much better. It could be why my needle broke. My foot totally wasn't on. Okay, that's another good tip. Look at that, full of tips today. Okay, so let's try this again. Oh, it sounds so much better than that clunk it made. Okay. The vinyl that I'm using, I have had in my resources for a very, very long time. So it was extremely crinkly. Okay. It was so crinkly it wouldn't lay flat. Now, you're not going to really iron vinyl. However, I did. And what I did is I had my iron have it more at a medium temperature, and you're not going to touch the surface of the vinyl with the iron. That will not be a happy day. Okay, so I did use the tissue paper that it came with and laid that over the top, and I pressed it, and as you notice, it has some kind of marks in it. So this, you only do this if you're not going to see it. Okay, and
so
yes.
Tammy has a question. She wants to know, is there a possibility to put the towels wrong sides facing and then turn them right side out to give a cleaner finish?
Oh, that's a good idea. You can definitely do anything you want to do, Tammy. The challenge with that, though, to think about is the bulk that you're going to get in that seam. Okay, and let me get this just stitched right there, because if you look at it, it has a hem here. So if you put hem to hem, and then you flip it, it's going to be kind of chubby in there, but that's perfectly fine if you want to do that. Now, if you're working with thread that's the same color as what your towel is, you're not going to see it, and it's not going to look messy. Okay, but yes, you can definitely adjust that, or do it that way if you like. Now, I will say I didn't mention what this was. This is called the digital dual feed. And if you notice that the black area right there, that's a little conveyor belt that is actually pulling the top layers of fabric through while the feed dogs are working on the bottom layers. So it's helping get everything to feed smoothly. And as you know, if you ever work with vinyl or anything like that, it can be really sticky and really hard to feed through. Okay, so now I would go all the way around, but I'm just for speed's sake, I am not. But now is the time that you would come back in and just trim off the extra. And so I'm just going to do it like you do wrapping paper, right? Just trim that off. So there's that one. And this is an inexpensive towel, so it wasn't even square where the band is. It actually pulls in. So just know that depending on the quality of the towel you have, but we're not doing this for a luxury bath experience. It's for the practicality of it. Another type of towel that would work really good for this, and that you can find them in the stores right now really easily, are beach towels. And those are fun and bright. And okay, let me get in here. I've got a nice big chunk over here that I want to kind of get off. So let me get to that spot. And then I should be able to hold it. And then just get that going there. Okay. All right. So now this little thing that I'm doing right now is much smaller than my car seat, so it would not work for the car. However, it would work beautifully for, a changing mat, anything like that. Okay, I'm just going to quickly do this, and I want to show you how I stitched them together. And then, oh, my towels aren't even the same size. Isn't that a joy? Okay, cool. All right, so you're going to get it clipped around here, right? Clip it around just to hold it together, and then you're going to stitch it down. Now, I want to show you a couple of things that you might not know are on your machine. So the first thing I'm going to do is, this is extremely bulky right here, and if you wanted to, you could unstitch everything, and then you could do like Tammy suggested and right sides together and flip. But since that's so bulky, I'm going to start stitching down here, okay? So I'm going to slip that in even below where my my clip is. Get these lined up. And now, since this zigs and zags off of, it's a zigzag, I want to get it as close to coming off of the fabric as possible. So let's get that going. Okay, so see how it's coming right to the edge, and I can see this red mark on that foot is where I'm going to kind of aim my fabric, okay? And I'm going to just keep aligning my edges and go all the way around. And let me break the thread here, or cut the thread, so you can see what I'm talking about here. So this encapsulates the edge, and it gets those two to be together. And if you're using the same color of thread, you're not even going to see it. Okay, so then you don't even have a right side or a wrong side issue, because you're blending them together. Now, when you come back around here, because that's so bulky, I found it best to stitch and stop right there and tack it in, and then start here, and then close that up. But just stay away from the bulk of the corners. Otherwise, you're going to have a challenge with the machine sewing, and you'll break needles. I don't know how. Can't say that I did that this week when I made the one for my car. I don't know. Anyway, so, but that's how you do that. But I want to show you something on your settings and in your machine. And I'm going to take this off really quick, if there is a really quick, because I want to put the other foot back on. I want to show you something. Then if you want to, if you're working with a larger towel like I did for my actual one, I used my chalk marker, and I used my Quilter Select ruler, and I made lines, and I just did a simple straight stitch across the towel to keep it from being slippery. You want it to work as one unit, not, ice skating. Okay, so now where did I put my actual foot? Aha, I found it. So let's put the regular foot back on, because this is really cool, and your machine may have it too, so I want you to see it. Okay, so if we're stitching this right here. And actually, let me put it, I'm just going to do a straight stitch. Let's pretend that I want to do that straight stitch here. So if I'm going to do my straight stitch, I have everything lined up. And of course, it would behave better because if I had it stitched all the way around. However, let's lengthen that stitch because we don't need our top stitch to be really small. But if you're going to stitch, look how it's dry. That's a long stitch, but look at how it's bubbling up in front, and it's having more of a difficult time. It's making the stitches really tiny. If we go into settings, you may have something that says presser foot pressure. And if you make that lower, it's less pressure. And then it's going to feed bulky, thicker things through easier than it would without them. Okay? It does not replicate the digital dual feed foot at all, but it does, you're not going to be able to see it so sunken, but it will feed better because these are so tiny and then these are longer. So, you can probably even see how it made that, stretched it out so it has a little bit of a dimple there, and this is laying nice and flat there. So that's something to think about. So let me put it back up to the regular setting. So here's one way you can see if you've gone the right way, because you never know, did I make it tighter or did I make it looser? I put the foot down, it's on normal, and wait, hey. Well, did I do it? Let's see if I did. No, there we go. Okay, let's see. So give it a pull, see how hard or how easy it is to pull the fabric out. Then let's go in here and we'll loosen this up a little bit, and then let's see how easy that pulls. That means that I did lessen the pressure of the presser foot. And so if you're working with fleeces or anything really super bulky and you're having the fabric drag and it's difficult to feed it through, try changing that setting a little bit. Some machines have a little knob up here. Just remember to put it back when you're done. Otherwise, you're going to be sewing something, you're like, why is it just being so weird and wonky? Check that. Okay. All right. So are there any questions on anything? Nope. Okay, so again, if you make this in a full-size towel and use half of it, it's the perfect size to sit underneath the base of a car seat, and it will catch your spills and your drips, and then it won't leak through onto your upholstery. It's also, like I said, this would be great to have for a changing mat because it's warm. I've made a changing pad for my daughter, but it has that stuff that's initials, I don't remember. It's the stuff that's waterproof, but then it's cold when you put the baby down if you put her on it, and then because they're supposed to, so you can wipe it up, right? So anyway, just keep that in mind. So make something fun, have a good time, and enjoy your machine and do something fun. So we'll see you next time.